Alright, hey everybody, just really quickly, I always forget to put this at the beginning of my videos because I just jump right in. But if you are liking the content in the channel, don't forget to hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're only 8 away from 1,500, and get ready for a lot more content because we're going to be getting our new camera pretty soon here, which means that all things are going to change on here. A lot of different kinds of new content done differently than I've ever done them before. So if you like this, don't get used to things looking like this. Hopefully it's going to look a lot better in about a month or so. So enjoy the review. Alright, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and I've got a lot of people asking me where my Dark Season 3 reviews are, and just like this show, I have to tell you guys one little thing before we get started. I made a video a little while back, actually I think it was like the end of last year maybe even, that I no longer do episode-to-episode reviews for brand new bingeable seasons of TV. One, I work 40 hours a week. Two, when I'm not working, then I'm just working on that. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of thought, breaks my brain. And for shows like Dark especially, it's really hard to just get all that out. Another reason is fandom. The fandom is kind of a mixed bag, and when you can have like 10 episodes where people hate something you're doing, why not just do one video they hate? But we will be doing a Dark Season 3 review, but it's just going to be one review. We're almost done with the show, and then I got to figure out what the hell to say about it because there's a lot. And that's why I'm saying that about this as well, which is Hulu's The Great. A sometimes and occasionally true story, and it is also, they dropped all the episodes, and it's been out for a minute, and I didn't get to it right away, mainly because I looked at this and went, Victorian, you know, like, just royalty doesn't really do it for me. Now, to be honest, to be fair, I never thought Downton Abbey would do anything for me, and now I love that show. So by that, that's the main reason why I started watching this was, well, if I like Downton Abbey, what could possibly be bad about this? It's got Elle Fanning and Nicholas Hoult. I really didn't know what it was about, though. I didn't do any research. I didn't read any of this. I just started watching and found out that it's a satirical look at the life of Catherine the Great that is highly fictionalized, and satirical, and yes, they mix in some truth in amongst the fantasy. Now, if you're into hardcore real history, then you'll probably be bothered by this. If you didn't like some of the harsher things about shows like Game of Thrones, I definitely don't think you'd like this either. In fact, while I was watching the first episode, I had to watch the first episode in chunks, because I couldn't get through it, because I was going, what am I watching? This is horrifying. I know that they're trying to be funny and satirical, but I was just really taken aback, mostly by how awful and vile Nicholas Hoult's character was and all the things that were happening to Elle Fanning's character. But then I had to process it as, this is what it was like. And for people back then in Russia and other countries, and it was brutal and hard. And this is a very dark, tongue-in-cheek look at how Catherine became Catherine the Great and took power in Russia and lived to be, like, I think 69 years old. And so once I finished the first episode, I was like, I don't know if I'm going back to this. I thought the acting was great. I thought the production was great. But I was just like when I first watched the very first episode of Game of Thrones, okay? If you haven't seen the first episode of Game of Thrones, a little bit of spoilers, okay? But like, that has... when it ended with a scene of incest and then child murder, or what is believed to be child murder, where you push a kid out of a fucking tower window because you were caught banging your sister. And then there was also the stuff with Daenerys and her brother and him like looking her over, and her whole scene with Khal Drogo with it was all just really disturbing and stuff that I had never seen like that put on screen before. And yet I kept coming back. And I kept saying, why am I watching this? Then I read the books and I was like, okay, all right. So this is what it's supposed to be like. All right. You know, I'm still disturbed, it's still shocking, but whatever. And that's how I felt here. So when I actually watched the second episode, I didn't start the third right away. But once I started the third, I pretty much was watching 2 or 3 a day until it was over, which only took a couple of days, really. And so I have to say, like, first impressions of all the way through, Hulu's The Great is pretty great. I really love this. And I'll get one thing right out of the way. Okay, ending, the very, very end, I'm talking last 10 seconds. Shame on you, show. Shame on you for for cutting away literally at the moment that we'd all been waiting for. And whether or not they'll come back and start immediately from that moment, or will we do a time jump like some shows do. That cutaway reminded me of cutaways they started doing in Game of Thrones near the end, where something just started to get interesting, and then we'd cut away. Somebody would start to say something really great, and then they'd cut away. That's what they did at the end of this season. It was the only thing by the end of it that just went, ooh, you don't pull... Okay, it's like if there was another episode next week, I'd be fine. Like Lost. Whenever Lost would have, every episode would end and you'd be like, I gotta see the next one. That's how I felt at the end of it. So, I mean, anticipation, great. If I have to wait a year, that usually my anticipation turns to like how I feel about Dark Season 3, which was so much time had gone by and I'd done so many other things that I forgot half the shit that was going on and people's names and all that. But here and now, while it's still been fresh in my mind, The Great is something that is pretty fun. And it's 10 episodes, all about an hour long-ish, close to it. They're actually perfectly paced. And the exact amount of time I want an episode of something like this. It clips along. Other shows like Doom Patrol, they feel the length. This does not feel the length. It's like an episode of The Sopranos where you're so sucked in, all of a sudden it's over and an hour has gone by. And this show does not shy away from the gruesomeness that was, and the hopelessness and the bleakness just of being in Russia in the 1700s. Now, let's talk about the cast. Of course, we can't go on without talking about the cast, and then we'll get into this. I said we're going to be doing an extensive review, and this is an extensive review. So, first, this show, a lot of these are directed by Bert, and some of these are directed by Bert and Bertie, who've done other cool things. But this is headlined by Elle Fanning and Nicholas Hoult. Now, Elle Fanning, I think she's a fine actress. I haven't watched all of her movies. In fact, I just watched for the first time My Neighbor Totoro, where she and her sister are both in that, and that was when she was real young. And so it was really weird watching her be this adult. It's kind of like how I feel when I see Dakota Fanning now, like in movies like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where I'm still remembering her as the little kid from, I Am Sam going, like, telling off the people at the, child services, you give some of that, or whatever she says to it. So I still kind of see her as a little girl, and so there's a lot of horrible things that happen to this character. Horrible things. It's why I'm not playing any episodes behind me, because it's very hard to show anything from this show. You can go from just having a walking down the hallway, West Wing style conversation to a scene just full of nudity and sex and violence and horrifying moments. And while that's all great, it's very hard to put that on screen. And now, I don't mind showing violence, but nudity and sex, it's kind of a, this channel may not be for fucking kids, but, I also don't feel like being, like a Playboy channel either. So, Elle Fanning, though, is incredible. I have never liked her more than in this. She goes through so many dramatic transformations as she slowly learns her way through court, starting from naivete and frustration and trying to just not know what her place is, and to feeling immediate fear for her life, to developing this plan that she has. And like I said, we're talking spoilers here, so I mean this plan to run a coup on her husband. And all the people that she eventually starts to convince and sway her way to hopefully overthrowing them and making Russia a better place. Now, I did a little tiny bit of research on Catherine the Great, but it's like, I know the name. I don't really know the story. There is one story that I didn't know that was referring to her, and that's the whole fucking a horse thing. I didn't know that was about her. A rumor gets started in court that she had sex with a horse, and I had heard that story a long time ago about like that kind of thing, that story, and I just kind of lost track of who that was about. There's a lot of things in life to remember. A lady supposedly banging a horse is something I wouldn't mind forgetting. And so she goes through all these things, jumps through all these hoops, starts to change things, and, falls in love for real, and has to make all these sacrifices along the way, and none of it's easy. All of it's hard. There are a few moments where I'm banging my head against the wall figuratively, going, why would she make this decision, But I think that's just for dramatic effect, because like I said, this is a occasionally true story. And so there's a lot of liberties in here for dramatic effect. That being said, this show is really funny. As dark and as harsh and as horrible as some of the things are that are happening, it's hard not to laugh at it through a certain lens. Especially because the characters are caricatures for the most part. Catherine, I feel like, is less of a caricature, but Nicholas Hoult as Peter, what she's been trying to figure out through the whole series is, what kind of Peter am I going to be? My dad was Peter the Great. I'm Peter the... Okay? There's a few things. Sorry, I just got out of the car, and it was so humid in there, and I didn't feel like putting a hat on, so we're going to be letting the hair fly rock and roll style. But Nicholas Hoult, as much as Elle Fanning is great, and I think, both of them should be up for awards, Nicholas Hoult steals every fucking scene he's in across the board. Every episode, there is not one scene where he isn't phenomenal. He is basically Joffrey Baratheon, and you want all the bad things to happen to him that could possibly happen to him, but at the same time, unlike Joffrey, you are laughing at times at him. He's the Homer Simpson, I feel like, of satirical, historical shows, because he's so ridiculous, because he's just so willing to just not think, and he doesn't seem to be self-aware about anything. He doesn't even believe in, he kind of feels like he doesn't really even deserve what he's got, but he just keeps going and just does everything on a whim, kind of like Homer. He doesn't really think about things. He just does whatever he wants. And so when you have a character that ridiculous, even when he's doing something awful sometimes, you can't help but laugh. Even though you know that historically this is, he's doing things that are just as bad as stuff that Joffrey was doing. if not worse. And there are times when you're going to want to grab him through the screen and bash his face in with a rock. But he's also can be very smart at the same time. So he seems really dumb, and he is dumb. Okay, he is dumb. But there are other things about him that are smart, which is running a court. I am going to put a hat on. Sorry, it's like 90 degrees here in Illinois right now. I don't know what it's like anywhere else, but it is hot as balls. And I just needed to get my hair out of my face. Sucks, because I like my hair right now. So he's really savvy, though, when it comes to being a Russian and understanding the court and manipulating the people that are around him. So just when you think he's can't, you know, he's going to be an easy dupe, you have to remember the power he has and how he's not afraid to use it, ever, and he will turn the tables on you. And he does have people that look out for him, namely this couple that's consists of his best friend since he was a kid and his wife, which his character Peter has sex with on a regular basis, and the husband is okay with it, even though you can see that it over the course of the first season runs quite a toll, sharing his wife that he loves, who claims to still really love him. It's a very weird situation. Can you imagine just your best friend just coming over and banging your wife, and you having to just be okay with it because he could have you killed? His friendship in this, and that's kind of like that character in a nutshell, is that he loves this friend, but he would have, and he's known his whole life, but in the second he would kill him. If it meant, if he felt like his friend was impeding on his happiness at all. So like I said, Nicholas Hoult kills it. And I don't know if and when he leaves the show at some point, because his character is the one that's being, plotted to be overthrown, and we know that she takes power. And since I didn't look up, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, real life spoilers, that I don't know how long he'll last. But when he leaves the show, or if he leaves the show, it'll be sorely missed, because he is just brilliant. He is brilliant. The other characters in here, Phoebe Fox as Elle, as Catherine's handmaid, her little right-hand helper, who's also in on the co, is excellent. She's got her own reasons for everything. She used to be a lady of the court and had everything stripped away, and now she's just a maid, a glorified maid. And so she wants her titles back. And she's done incredibly. There is a bit of foreshadowing that they say really early on in the episode, and I went, oh, well, that's what's going to happen here. It does, but it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the show. In fact, when it happens, you're kind of like, oh, man, I forgot. But yes. Sacha Dhawan, who plays Orlo, he's great, but he's also frustrating because he's the guy that knows, he's the smart one in court. Nobody cares, nobody wants to listen to him, but they do understand his intelligence. But people don't really take him too seriously. And you don't for a really long time in the show either, because he seems kind of spineless and cowardly, he knows that things need to change, but he'd rather live than fix things. And it takes Catherine a long time to try to convince this guy to help out. And I'm trying to remember what he was in, and I wanted to say it was Iron Fist that I saw him in before this. And he was Davos in Iron Fist. I wondered why I recognized him. Well, there we go. Next name up as soon as this thing decides to load up on me. Charity Wakefield is Georgina, and Willem Lee, they as Grigor. Those are the couple that I was talking about that sleep with and help and slash best friends with Peter. They're really excellent. Adam Godley. Adam Godley as Archbishop Archie. The religious aspect, the religious perspective of the show is brilliant. He's a character actor that you'd recognize from a million things, but this, he really shines. He looks so much like Nostradamus. Or no, who was the guy? Who was the asshole from back then in the the guy that couldn't be killed? He looks like him. He's been in everything, and I do remember him. I thought, yeah, Breaking Bad. He was Elliot Schwartz on Breaking Bad, so he comes with a good pedigree behind him as well, and he steals a lot of his scenes because he's so like he's one of those kind of gray area, kind of not gray area. You know, he wants the church to run things, but he also has his own schemes, and so he's a very, very, very entertaining and watchable character where you don't really know if you want him to live through this or not, and is it a good idea? Like, can they use him for something, or will he use them for something? But he is fantastic. Seriously, Adam Godley. Like, I'm pointing him out specifically. Really, really excellent. As far as the side actors go, as the co-stars go, as the, you know, he is huge standout on this show. Because he, like Peter's character, basically will do whatever he wants to fit his narrative, including taking a bunch of mushrooms when he's demanded to have a vision from God. Douglas Hodge as the leader of the Russian army, Velementov. He is also a delight as this, and I guess delight's not the right word. He's just really great. He's really great as this drunken, slovenly, non-winning wars or battles general who has the hots for Catherine and is another one of the pawns in the can we get this guy to our side, but he's also really funny, and the guy really goes for it. He's required in so many scenes to just be humiliated in front of his men, in front of women. He even takes himself as a joke. He doesn't take himself seriously anymore. He's like, basically, he doesn't even care, it seems like, if he lives or dies anymore. And how, over the course of this season, how that kind of evolves as well. None of these characters just sit still and do nothing, except for maybe some really minor characters like in Court, that you just kind of, that are literally background and just add a little bit more to the characters' story arcs, because you need something to bounce off of. Belinda Bromelow as Aunt Elizabeth. Again, another standout who's always being, like, always has butterflies around her. She talks about how people think she's mad, but she is pretty crazy. But she also understands the politics, and she understands family above all else. She wants to protect her line, her family line, which is Peter's side of things, and she will kill anyone who gets in the way, literally. But also wants to see things succeed. Everybody's very complex, and she's also so great. It's like when she shows up, you don't know whether to be excited or in terror. And that's great writing, if you can do that. And when an actor can then take that writing and elevate it to another level, that's what she does here. And then you have, let's see, we get through some of these that are also, I'm not going to say everybody. Sebastian D'Souza as Leo is the lover that Peter gives to Catherine, because he's screwing everything that moves. He wants her to be happy. He only has sex with her to try to make a kid. And so since she's not happy, he gives her a lover named Leo, who also becomes a big part of her life. Although at first it's abhorrent to just take a lover while you're married. Like, there are people that try to fight with those standards, but in this world that they're in, fighting those moralities when there's no morals in the court, you pretty much have to either go with the flow or you wind up getting your head cut off, or worse. And so Leo is this character who starts off as just he's built up as a Lothario, and then you realize quickly that he's anything but, and becomes so much more, and becomes one of the biggest, strongest characters for Catherine by the end of the first season. And he's really, really good. In fact, when I first saw him, I'll be honest, I was like, are we going to be following around this nothing? He turned out to be really great. So I'm sorry I'm saying that your character started out to me as nothing, Sebastian. Not that you're going to see this, but you turned it around for me. So he's the biggest question mark I had about whether I'd care or not. And boy, did I end up caring quite a bit about his character as the show went on. And I think, oh man, the Dr. Chekhov, played by Jamie Dimitriou, he's also fantastic. He's so dry in how delivering the worst possible news. He's got like the worst bedside manner, but he says it in like the most deadpan way. Fantastic. Charlie Price as Ivan. I didn't know what they were going to do with this kid, but boy does he have a shocking. He is Joffrey. Like if Joffrey is a toddler. And I did not know what they were going to do with him, but boy, what they do with him is pretty crazy. And I think that that's pretty much all we need to talk about as far as the characters. Now, let's go into the details here. And we'll talk about quickly. So we kind of discussed the first episode, The Great, where she comes in completely, she's not even Russian. The fact that they keep reminding her out throughout the whole show, as she becomes Russian in her heart, sees how much she wants to do for people. All the things about that she wants to change things about education, art, sciences, doing things for the people, things that are not happening or will ever happen under Peter's rule. Because he's all just about fucking and drinking and causing war and living up to his father's expectations that he's built up in his own head. In fact, his father's, what his father would have wanted and him making him proud and him actually missing his father sincerely are some of the interesting attributes about that character that we start to find out. And so he's not just like this evil guy, he's an evil guy. And it's even worse because he doesn't really think about his evilness very much. But that first episode is basically her finding her own way and setting up the main story, creating the world. Now the beard starts to set up like what it was like, very succinctly. They did not allow beards. And people that try to, there's one guy in particular who has it forcibly cut off by someone who really doesn't want to. And it's Orlo who has to cut it off with like a knife. And so yeah, in that first episode they're trying to recruit people for their cause. And throughout it we start to see like, what does Peter want to be? They start to wonder if Catherine's sterile. We also have that great scene, like I said, where we get so many different examples. I'm not going to go through all the episodes now that I'm looking at it. And I also don't want to go into too many spoilers because I do think that you guys deserve to see some of this happen on your own. But there are so many great things, like when the pox comes. And you have to deal with the smallpox that could wipe out everybody. And the whole question of, do we just kill all the servants, or could we actually find a way to help them? And how you have to actually convince this despot, this dictator. They call him a king, but I mean, he behaves like a dictator. And the callous way that they just go, well, it's not us, so fuck them. And Catherine desperately trying to find, ways around this so that they can help everyone. And that how sometimes even the greatest fight can't be won just by willing it. But sometimes the reality of a situation isn't just because people are bad and evil. Sometimes the only answer is the most horrible thing. The episode Parachute is hilarious, where they try to bring science and art and a printing press into the world there, and how one of the characters has built a parachute, and how Nicholas Hoult, basically his character, takes the science and stuff and runs with it his own way. and brings in all these basically horrifying experiments that are awful. The minorest being like, lighting a fire in your butt and watching it, make a little flame when you fart, to electrocuting a kid so that he can become a human magnet. And then literally throwing a dog off a balcony just to see if the parachute works. There's also when they try to poison. There's a moment an episode where they poison Peter Hoult's character, Nicholas Hoult's character Peter, and you literally think that he might die. But there was like 3/4 of the way in, I was like, they're probably not going to kill him here. But it's a really interesting ride where they're all getting ready to move on this coup, and how his best friend is the one who poisons him because he had gotten tired of him sleeping with his wife, and how all that goes, and how you can see they're not ready for a coup at all, even if this guy does die. Meatballs at the DACA. They go to the Swedes that they're at war with, and how Nicholas Hoult's Peter and the king of Sweden they end up being pretty much bros until the subject of St. Petersburg comes up, and Catherine gets to show how she could lead. You get to start to see her strength as a leader that could happen, and how he starts to see it as well. And what's one of the funniest things is he actually starts to fall in love with her. He actually starts to try to woo her in his own way. And of course his own way is horrifying and awful. There's a whole thing about how he goes down on her, and he thinks he's just opened her world up, and she's conflicted as well, because how can somebody I hate do something that I find great pleasure in? And then they have an episode called Love Hurts, the penultimate one, where someone who, Peter's bodyguard, dies. He gets drowned. He drowns. He falls. You even see it. There is no murder. He's drunk. He falls into a fountain and dies. But they think that now he could have been poisoned, so he decides to torture the entire court. And the only people left out are Peter and Catherine and like 1 or 2 other people. Oh, it's his best friend and his wife. They get left out. And the torture is like, pulling fingernails. There's a guy who drops a brick on your head. But you don't know when it's going to come. There's all sorts of terrible things that happen. And then there are betrayals that happen near the end, where everybody is so desperate to start this coup that you don't know where it's going to start. It could, because Peter's character, Nicholas Hoult's Peter, has hurt and gotten so many people mad at him that there are so many motives that things start happening all at once, and it's kind of hard to tell who's going to end up on whose side. And so when we get to the finale, where things actually start to happen, and I'm not going to say who lives and who dies, but it's just amazing. But then they cut away at the end, right at its most opportune moment of the balance is about to shift in one way or another, and they cut away from it. And that was the only thing that desperately made me angry. Was because don't make me wait a year. It's already been longer than it should be, I think, for Handmaid's Tale to come back, right? How long? It feels like Handmaid's Tale came out, I guess it's been about a year, right? And it's still not back. All right, so that's how bad I want this show to come back. It's like Handmaid's Tale for Hulu. Hulu has The Handmaid's Tale and this to me. Solar Opposites is pretty good too. But that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it. I've said quite a bit. But I do highly recommend watching The Great. Even if you are a major history buff, I think you can appreciate what they're trying to do here. It's one of the best satires I've ever seen. I can't believe I laughed so much at horrible things. But it's not as bleak as some of the stuff that's out there right now. Like, people are talking about how bleak The Last of Us 2 is. And I've been watching Dark Season 3, like I said, and that shit feels hopeless. So this is kind of like Game of Thrones with a conscience? I don't know. Game of Thrones light? No. There's no dragons. But it's really, really funny. And while Game of Thrones can be funny, most of the time it's just really, serious. It's serious, but it's pretty damn funny. I laughed out loud a lot during this show, and I don't laugh out loud. I'm one of those people who's like, and somebody's like, are you having a good time? I'm like, yeah, I'm having a blast. I'm just laughing on the inside. This made me laugh out loud. So, anyway, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you like this review, please hit the like button. As of this moment, I haven't checked, we are 8 subscribers away from 1,500 subscribers. It kind of snuck up on me because I've been doing a lot of different things right now, mostly work. But yeah, if you like this, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, this is Rob at Smirking Gun Review saying, check this show out if you like this kind of thing. I really think it's going to be like one of those sleeper hits that people find, because I haven't heard anybody talking about it. But hopefully, this show gets a wider audience and gets a really strong second season started as soon as they can. So, this is Rob saying have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.